Hello, I am Tamima and welcome to Shaping African Conversations. So obviously we're coming to you live via the Switch TV Facebook page. So hello Facebook fam, remember that every week we're here Tuesdays at 5 o'clock, and today we're going to be focusing on COVID-19 and branding for success. I have an amazing hour lined up for you guys. If your friend hasn't joined, send them the link, invite as many people as possible, because this is a conversation that is going to serve you not just in your personal life, but also if you're running your business. And I also have some amazing guests and panelists who will just be contributing and of course helping us learn around how we can better brand for success. So let me start with my regulars. Gadoni Mbugwa, who is a clinical psychologist at the Chiromo Lane Medical Center. Hey Gadoni. Unmute please, Gadoni.
Hi everyone. Hi Tabima. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, and then we also have Gina Dean Karaoke. Hey Gina.
Hi there. Good evening.
Good to have you back.
Thank you.
And also we have Paul Achar, who is a strategic communicator / advisor. Hey Paul.
Good evening.
Okay, great to have you on. We also have Angie Obwaka, who is a career coach and HR lead.
Hi, Tamima. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Angie. And also we have Simon Miner. Simon is a counseling psychologist and also a pastor at Nairobi Chapel. Simon, I'm going to ask you to unmute. I think we missed that.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, much better. Now, you know this thing of Zooming. I know we are still learning. So I'm just going to remind everyone who's on the call, when it's your turn to speak, please don't forget to unmute the microphone. And then also we have Elizabeth Masi.
Hi Tamima. Hi everyone.
Okay, and finally we have Bernard Kirago.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for...
So before we start, I just want to remind everyone that we love hearing from you. If you have any questions around how you can personally brand for success as an individual, or whether you're running a business and you want to understand how can I position my company to actually make the most out of this situation, because we know without a doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has left in its wake, a lot of disruptions, not just socially, economically, and politically, but we are now finding a scenario whereby experts are predicting that the next months are going to be very difficult for most economies. And this is now to the tune of probably a recession that we haven't experienced in this generation. And basically, it's a situation that is unraveling as we go. But at the same time, I love the optimism. And that's why we're having this conversation, because we're trying to teach you to actually recognize what opportunities you have at hand, how you can work with what you have to actually improve the quality of your own life. So I want to start with just mentioning that, Gina is a guru in this area. So this is the point where you guys pull out your notebooks, take notes. And of course, we have Paul as well, who's a strategic communication advisor. So I just want to start with the basics, because, and I'm going to throw this to you, Gina. What is a brand? Because we're talking about branding for success. So I feel like it's important to just define what is a brand to start with.
So a brand is really, how you are seen, how you are defined, what you stand for. And I think, as I was saying to somebody earlier today, is if you're not a brand today, then it means that you don't really want to be one, because I built my brand when there was no social media whatsoever. And it was very intentional and very deliberate. But today, with all the technology available, and as my friend Paul Achar will tell us later on, is everybody literally can be a brand if they so want to. So anybody who tells me that they're not a brand and they have all the tools and the technology at their fingertips means that they don't really want to. But I think just to go back on what is an authentic brand is, I think, much more of what we should be saying, because we see a lot of brands online that are really not genuine and not real. They're, they might be maybe imitating somebody else. But I think for me, being an authentic brand, what is really important, and what I think, the conversation should be about. How do we stay authentic and real and true to who we are?
Great, Gina. And I love that you've just actually pointed out something that most people do, whereby when you ask them, are you a brand? They'll assume big companies like Safaricom, brands that sell commercial goods and offer services. Most people don't look at themselves as individuals, as brands. And I want to throw this to you, Paul, because when it comes to communication, and there you have a young man or a young woman, why is it important for them to recognize themselves as an individual, as a brand?
Thanks, Tamima. I think it is important that young people realize that they're a brand, and how they position themselves in this what I would call the 21st century really determines a lot on what their success will be, how people will be able to perceive them. So it is important that realize that they are a brand. But more importantly, they also need to realize that how do they define that it is within your power to come up with the perception of how others will see this brand. It is within your power. You can't just leave it to chance. For so many people, you just go about life saying, I'll just roll with the days as they go. But for young people, especially professionals, it is important and for them to realize that it is possible to shape how others perceive who you are. And I guess we can be able to talk a bit about that in greater detail.
Absolutely.
And communication. Yeah, and communication is key as part of that. How you.
Absolutely, because I believe that you have to be your own greatest advocate. You have to understand how to position yourself, how to actually communicate what your positives are, how to manage your weaknesses as well. And it's so funny because, and I want us to first focus on the individual before we scale up to people who own businesses and probably even to an organizational level, because on the call we have Bernard and Elizabeth, so they're going to have some very important questions to you, Gina and Paul. But back to the individual, probably in the context of the situation we are in with the pandemic, I'm seeing a lot of people are now, a lot of people are anxious because most businesses are either not doing too well, most businesses are going through a process where they're considering redundancies, they're considering letting go of their staff. So I've had a question here from one of the people who watches our weekly show, and they were asking, how can I make myself stand out more as a brand at work, which I feel is very relevant given the times that we are in. So I think let me throw that to Angie, because Angie, you're a career coach and HR lead.
Thanks, Tamima, for that question. And I really like where we've started talking about branding, because I think there's a way in which when you look at a brand has to have value. And therefore, that's what draws and attracts people to purchase that particular brand, to be interested in that. In the life or in the world that we're in today, there's a lot of different brands. And therefore, each brand, the big name, each brand has to communicate value. And the same thing can be extrapolated to work. So as an individual, if you view yourself as a brand, you need to think about what sets you apart. Because one of the conversations I'm having with people is that, listen, if pre-COVID-19 you were just being mediocre in the workplace and you are not applying yourself, that will not apply post-COVID-19 or in this season we're in. So you need to be able to know what your value proposition is as an individual. What are you bringing to the workplace? Employers are now having to make serious cuts. Employers are needing to make tough choices, and they're no longer accepting the bare minimum, if any, if they were doing that past, and no longer wanting to take on 3 people for a role that could be done by 1. So if you are able to define yourself as a brand and somebody who is able to offer value, not just for the singular thing you studied or the singular thing you've been doing, but a broader range of, okay, within communication, I'm no longer just focusing only on PR, but I can also help the organization with marketing. with the channel communication, and therefore that becomes your value proposition to the organization, and that sets you apart automatically. So it's looking at, okay, these are the skills that I have, but how do I communicate that? How do I present that in a value addition way to the organization? And that is something that will need to be a lot more in our language, a lot more in our thinking about ourselves as individuals, not just as a graduate or somebody who has 5 years experience, but what is it of value that I can be able to offer you as an employer, you as an organization.
And just to pick up the question that you've asked, how do I, and I'm going to use myself as an example, if I was Tamima who works at company X, and I know the challenges that company X is undergoing, and just generally the general economic situation. So how can I effectively communicate my brand value? And I'm going to throw this to you, Paul, because like you mentioned earlier, in as much as we are saying that I have to be the biggest advocate of my value, but I believe that there is a way that you can engage in a very effective manner, that you see the results that you're actually angling for.
Well, Tamima, yes, you're right. And I think what Angie, I'll just try and ride on to what Angie was saying. It begins with identifying the brand or who you are and what you do stand for. What value do you bring into the organization? And a lot of times value will be how you're able to move beyond just job description, beyond just what the JD says. Once you're able to identify that, and see how it fits in within the wider scope of your operations, then you go ahead to figure out how do I communicate this. And personal communication, which is really what I've spent a better part of the past couple of years looking at, is would involve various aspects. Would involve your interpersonal communications.
So is this where you're harassing your HR? Hi, I'm here. This is what I can do for you. You know, you're constantly just meeting all the managers in the corridor, introducing yourself. What's the etiquette? What's the best way to go about it?
Well, I think there are certain basics, but a lot of it sometimes is contextual also, but certain basics, if you look at it from the perspective of interpersonal communication, we just learning and mastering the art of conversation. For example, being able to know how do I start a conversation? What are some of those things that are polite and are acceptable? What are some of those things that are also not acceptable, especially within the 21st century organization? One thing that I have found within our context, sometimes people have struggled with is coming up with statements that then are perceived to be sexist statements. And they might have been acceptable in an era gone by, but now you just can't get away with things with certain statements. Learning the art of listening, learning storytelling. I guess good communicators are good at telling stories and transforming those facts into compelling narratives. So that's at an interpersonal level. But this particular brand that you're trying to build will also maybe need you to have the ability to speak in front of people, speak in front of the public, maybe invest a bit in your public speaking skills, your presentation skills, your persuasion skills, and also a small group leadership and being able to participate in small groups within the organization. You need to have that ability to effectively be able to, if you're a leader, how do you lead those Monday meetings? Are they just death by meeting, or are they meetings that effectively get people to achieve what they intended to do? So those are some of the communication variables that I would look at when talking about personal brand, and also mastery of the non-verbal. I think non-verbal communication is a key component of personal brands.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And so joining us right now is Tommy, all the way from Nigeria. Hello, Tommy. How are you?
How are you?
You know, I gotta hand it to you every week because it's like you just take the whole week out to go and study Swahili language, so that the next time you're on here, you can drop a line. So I gotta hand it to you. Okay, so Tommy, we're
Good to be
talking
here
about
again.
branding for success, and we are focusing
Yeah.
on the individual. So if I threw it to you, because you're a woman with many talents, so what do you feel is your personal, what makes you unique? What would you say is your personal branding statement as Tommy Sim?
Okay. Hello, everyone, panelists, Gina Dean. I believe this topic is Gina Dean's forte. This is our own area. And first of all, I must say congratulations on that word.
The awards,
Yes.
the award ceremony is in half an hour's time.
Wow. So right after now, we're receiving the award.
Virtually, unfortunately, but yes.
At least we can share in the joy.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yes, so back to you, Tamima. For me, what would I say?
Tommy, you're mute. You have to unmute. Okay, so as we wait for her to fix that, remember, I love hearing where you guys are streaming us from. Let me just read a couple of comments here from people who are actually streaming us live. We have Shimwash from Kiambu, Job Marcus, you're watching from Donholm, Jacinta Njuguna, you're watching from Gedurai, Calvin Jock Board, you're watching all the way from the USA. Oh, that's great. Belinda Mulei is watching all the way from Webuye. Kamamandru from Kamulu, Pablo all the way from Meru. And I just want to remind you that we have some amazing gurus on here. So if you have any questions around personal branding, how to position your business, please feel free to get on the comment section. Uliza Kiswahili, Kiingereza. The point here is that we want to empower you, we want to give you some very useful tips around how you can actually brand yourself for success during COVID-19. So Tommy, you were saying?
Yes, so Tamima, thank you. I'm back here. All right. So for me, it starts with integrity. Goes back to reading. I'm an avid reader. I can do without picking a material on a daily basis to just consume. It's like food for me. Reading is like food for me. I can do without reading in a day. And reading for me is intentional. So I don't just materials for the purpose of consuming it. I pick up those materials because I want to better myself. Especially COVID-19 is here, and we are in a critical situation. If you don't do your best to consciously learn new skills, polish old skills, learn new techniques to get better at what you do by polishing your talent, getting much more relevant industry where you are, where you find yourself, you're likely to go into extinction very soon, no matter how young. So for me, it's reading. It's all about integrity. Integrity because, many of us, this young, whatever kind of job you do, and you're not conscious, kind message, your attitude, your behavior, your story tells you are not conscious of integrity. I think integrity is people who have money. So little things cannot be committed into your hands. You're not conscious of it. You're just living your life. It's all about end of month page. For such young people, you're not going to grow. And even if you find yourself growing somewhere along the line, that's going to be stifled. So for me, it's all about integrity. You must check yourself from time to time. Am I delivering on my promises? Am I keeping to my word? Am I saying what I mean? Am I doing what I say? Make sure you live your life based on integrity, and make sure you keep studying, and you keep. There is no end to what you learn when you study. And for me, that's what has taken me through this entire COVID team. I've just been rebranding myself with two things: checking up and rechecking, to ensure that at the end of COVID, I can look back and say, yeah, I emerged.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I think I want to throw this back to Paul, because I asked Tommy, your question. So, Paul, in the context of, and I kind of feel like most people actually do fail here, because if you ask the question, who are you? You'll find even some of the world's greatest communicators will actually be at a loss of words. And these are questions that I find most people will encounter, especially in formal job interviews. So what's the best way to tackle that? Because some people will now either start saying, you know, I used to play football in school. So in the context of just that one question that addresses, what is your personal brand statement? What's the best way to tackle that one?
Were you throwing that at me?
Yes, I want you now to, we did a practical where Tommy actually answered the question and looking at how she was able to address it, because this is a question that a lot of us will come across. If you're going for a job interview, it usually is in there in one way or another. And I find, because I've sat in a number of interviews where most people, even some of the strongest communicators, you know, people who talk for a living, actually struggle with that one when you're asked to define yourself.
Okay, so I will attempt not to define me, but to respond to how you can fill that question. I remember one time meeting a gentleman, and when it came to time for him to introduce himself, it was like, my name is James. And if you're thinking about integrity, you're thinking about someone who will be able to match their words with what is on the paper, then this is a person you're looking for. I am, went ahead to say, I am a father, I am a citizen of the world, and these are the values that I do bring. It was pretty profound. Everyone stood and everyone was like, wow. Because for a lot of us, when we are asked the question of who we are, we mistake it with what we do. Mm-hmm. So we end up saying, this is the career I am in, this is what I do to pay the bills. But we never quite get to know who you really are. I try to approach that question by talking about the values that I do espouse, what I do stand for. So before ultimately moving on to what I do. And sometimes I find that even when it comes to interpersonal communication, because we talked a little bit about interpersonal communication at that, it is one of those very impolite conversation starters to meet someone and start by asking them, what do you do? You know, a lot of times, and young people,
and so many people do that.
It's it is a real talent.
It's a disease.
Or where are you from?
Yes. Where do you live?
Where are you from? Yes. A lot of times we want to know who you are. Then maybe if we are interested in knowing what you do, you can go ahead to tell us what you do. Mm-hmm. So I find that one of the things that people need to be able to master, especially young people, as we're talking about communicating your personal brand, is how to open that conversation by trying to know who the other person really is. And I feel like as though I'm hogging a lot of time now, maybe
okay. So, thank you for that. And I just want to throw to anyone who's watching us via the Facebook live stream, I'm just going to give you a little exercise, because you never know nani yako kwenye mitandao. Just on the comment section, just humor me and write for me your personal brand statement. Who are you? If today anybody was looking for someone who has your skill set and whatnot, how would you sell yourself? So let's get to know each other in the comment section. And I want to throw this now to Gina, because we've spoken about how to communicate. And I feel like, back to the example that Paul gave, obviously that gentleman did not come up with it off the cuff. This is something that he must have practiced and practiced. But outside of just communicating, I'm pretty sure earlier on we were talking about people will ask things around, where do you live? What do you do for a living? And I'm asking this in the context of visuals. How important are visuals towards now building up your branding for success? Because young people, and I've seen this especially in the corporate sector, whereby people will complain thoroughly about how some people will come dressed at work. they'll complain thoroughly about, hairstyles, just simple things around grooming. So why is this important towards helping you building your brand for success?
Well, I think first impressions, so how if somebody walks into the room, what you see is really, that will form a big part of how you identify them. So for me, when somebody shows up for an interview prepared and they look good and they're tidy and they're clean, and I think that's a very big part of it. So I do think impressions are by the way we present. But I do think the other thing is that COVID has taught us in many jobs that positions come and go, but who you are as a person, and your ability to influence others by being yourself is really all that remains. I think we've seen that.
Okay, thank you so much.
I think. Sorry.
I think you're breaking up, Gina. Just repeat that. We were losing you there for a second. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I was saying COVID has taught us in the last few months that positions come and go, but who you are as a person, what you stand for, and your ability to influence others by being yourself is literally all that remains. So rather than deriving a sense of value and importance from where you're standing, it's wise to derive it from who you are as an individual. And I'm reading a really good book which I love, by Simon Sinek. It says there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence, and those who lead inspire us. So, I think it's really important that, we see ourselves put together, we put ourselves together, we take pride in how we look when we present, because that is part of our.
Okay, so there's somebody here who's asking, this is a question from a young lady called Ashley. She's asking, so does this mean I have to wear makeup everywhere I go?
No, not necessarily. I mean, as long as I don't think it's about, I think it's really about your own personal, how you brand yourself. If you brand yourself where you don't want to wear makeup, but as long as you're clean and tidy and presentable, and that doesn't mean makeup.
Okay, and I'm seeing, this is more of a statement instead of a question. Someone who's saying, I work in the creative scene. So that means that the louder I am, the better. And I kind of feel like it comes with a disclaimer, because in certain industries, they actually sort of like embrace people who are eccentric. Whereas if you are a banker, for instance, you cannot go to work, say how an artist or a musician or a fashion model looking the way ideally what they would wear in terms of hairstyles and whatnot. So maybe, Gina, if you could just talk a bit more about that clarification.
Well, yeah, that's really interesting, because I joined a bank, when I was 21, but I wasn't a bank. And they're all men in brace, and then there was me. So I was definitely eccentric. And I have to say that I really did not, it wasn't on brand present. I did, but thankfully got used to relief. But yeah, I think, different industries, different set where you look, thankfully, curious. People expect and be a little bit more relaxed. But again, I think it's so important that we go back to what brand stands for, not about where it is. First, brand is about.
Thank you, Gina, for that. I think we're losing your audio. We're losing your audio. So we're just going to give it a minute. Let me just jump quickly to someone else as they figure out that one. So earlier on, I mentioned that I have Bernard and Elizabeth on today's episode. So Elizabeth, you were working for a fintech company, and after CBK announced a directive that people who were either going to be defaulting on loans or previous defaulters would not necessarily be listed under CRB, the company that you were working for stopped lending out loans, and this effectively meant that a lot of your colleagues actually got laid off. So Elizabeth, I want to give you the mantle because, like I said, we have amazing gurus on here. We have Gina, we have Paula Chara. So what's your question to them?
My question would be, given that I was rashly taken out of the employment thing, so how can I take myself back into the employment thing? How can I strategically position myself?
Okay. So Gina, are you good now? Can you take this one?
You can. Am I good with audio?
Yes.
I think it's being very intentional about how you present yourself and what you stand for and how you brand yourself. So it's really like I believe that everybody has their own art, and we can't really imitate other people or copy other people's brands because we are very special individuals in our own right. So I would create what your strengths are, and I would put them out there, and I would really probably relook at your profile and put in there what where you think you can add value, and I'm sure you can. And I think it's quite difficult when you've been taken out of the employment, and it just makes us quite sad about. But I do think there are opportunities post-COVID, and I think we need to look for them, and we need to present taking our individual and making our brand, and again being.
Okay, thank you, Gina. And Angie, I want you to also just pipe in on that one, Angie. And probably before you answer, maybe also consider, because I'm just seeing a very interesting question here as well. Someone is asking, if I've been laid off, am I allowed to inform people who are interviewing me for a job that I was made redundant? Does it work to my disadvantage?
Let me answer the second question and come back to Elizabeth. With the second question, I think what's important is you not just answering generically like, okay, I lost my job, they are releasing people and so they released me. Because in that sense, it seems like, okay, you are not an essential part of the organization, and that is.
So it works against you.
If you give context to the fact that in light of COVID-19, our company suffered significant financial setback, and due to conversations, as a result, conversations between me and the organization, my role was considered. So it's less that your role was, less that you are not valuable to the company. It's more that collaboratively or in joint appreciation of the economy, you and the organization decided to take a step apart from one another.
So Mercy is doing a great job, because she actually outlined that the reason that what happened had nothing to do with her value, but everything to do with a larger environmental scenario that was beyond her control. So great job, Mercy.
Yeah, and that worked. Yeah, definitely. And then back to Elizabeth's question, I think what Gina said was critical. I think it's taking a step back. Sometimes when we have setbacks, we're very quick to, okay, this is a destabilization, I just want to jump back into the next thing. Sometimes it's taking a bit of a pause to reevaluate and take stock. So based on the fact that I'm here now, yes, I have lost my job or my source of income, but what can I do now? I can assess where I've come, how I've journeyed in my career to this point, assess what kind of work you are doing. Were you enjoying the work that you were doing? Were you enjoying parts of that work? Because sometimes it's not just jumping back into trying to give out loans, for example, in your situation. I really enjoyed going out the market and meeting new clients, or I enjoyed the numbers, I enjoyed the research, I enjoyed this particular part. And maybe this could be a good time for you to see how you could perhaps go deeper into the line of work or progress in what you actually enjoy and what you're gifted in, and what this time of reflection has offered you in terms of what can I do going forward. That's one thing. Then the other thing is being able to put together, like Gina said, your strength, but also what achievements you've been able to master. And that's what you go with as your foot forward when you're talking to new employers. So it's talking to them about, this is what I have been able to do in the past, not hypothetical, this is what my job description was, but this is what I delivered in terms of value proposition to my previous employer. And this is what I trust I will be able to give to you in the next work. But definitely a good period of time to be able to reflect and be able to position yourself in order for you to create value and offer that value tangibly in your personal statement, in your CV, in your applications, in stepping out in the line of work that you feel as you are in this particular point in time best suited to do.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Angie.
Can I just interject there? I think for many, and I love what you just said, for many, the experience of COVID-19 is still really extremely painful and too raw to even contemplate any positive outcome. And I think we need to accept that and understand that as much as we've all been in this together, our individual experiences have not been the same. I think it's really important to allow ourselves to process it all in our own. And I know, we need to get back to work, we need to have income, but I think we need to allow ourselves to process, because like you said, maybe we have a new skill that we didn't even know about. I mean, I look at myself now, 30 years of being in the PR industry and having not done anything else. My business acquired here, but suddenly there are all these other skills that I have that I didn't even know I had, And so I think that, we might find people, pivoting to different careers.
Okay, and I just want to invite
think,
Gadhoni, because now that we're talking about really, because you really have to be okay to be able to execute some of these tips and actually live and, move about with confidence, sell yourself. So Gadhoni, in the context of now COVID-19 and the disruptions that it has caused, because it means that people are being asked to adapt and adapt very quickly. So in the context of Elizabeth and anyone else who might have gone through what she has, because it's not easy being let go from a job. It's not easy losing your source of income. So what advice would you give to anyone who is where Elizabeth is?
Thank you, Tabima, for that. Thank you. And I really did. This is a free class. Let me pick it from what we obviously cannot do that our level of our way of coping. The truth is, some people, depending on whether they have been any other events in their life, this is going to be a minor set. They can somehow be able to restructure their minds and do this a very long time. The number one thing is just, first of all, to accept in regards to the situation where we are and where you are as an individual, not in comparison to another person. One of the things that came to the conversation was authenticity. Just being able to be real about who you are, what you want, just being able to be real about your feelings, validating your feelings, trying to be strong, to look strong. All is not lost. Going back to the drawing book and trying to figure out what is it I want. Because one of the things that I think about post-COVID is this reflection is going to bring new things in our life, new skills, for example. I feel like life is going to be more purposeful and more intentional moving forward. Even a job, just be like, do I really enjoy doing what I'm doing? Is this what I want to do in my life? So there are also good can come out of this period. Sometimes it's just genuinely honest, harder to try and draw that out right now. But if you go back, look at yourself, ensure that you are taking care of your mental, ensure that you are practicing self-care, because your mind is the most important tool you're bringing. And as well, to the friends around you, what is your social happiness? You take time to build. And if that didn't happen, I bet moving forward, we are going to be more about the people we have around us. And to the friends, I would like to say, encourage people like us, like Elizabeth, to listen to them, to try and be empathetic and not just to minimize what they are going through. Okay. And brush it off as get over it.
Thank you, Gadhoni.
People are actually really going a very, very hard time. We cannot be able to ignore that. But what I said is that all is not lost. I believe that there's a lot more we can be able to get out this.
Okay, thank you, Gadonia. Just to take some comments from people who are streaming us live at the Switch TV Facebook page. This is Linda Rotich, who is saying she's watching all the way from Nyandara. Great discussion. Positively taking these pointers to grow my individual brand. With this wave of COVID-19, it's only fair to come out better and stronger. Thanks to Mima and everyone and the rest of the team. Oh, thanks, Linda. Then Tunda saying, watching all the way from Nakuru. You're locked. Of course, let me just take a question here, and I feel like this really goes back to Bernard, because Bernard, you run a business. So far, we focused on the individual, but before we move on, I just want to make sure, Marcy, are you good? Do you feel like your question has been addressed before we move on to Bernard?
Yeah, I feel like everything has been addressed. Thank you.
Okay. So Bernard, your case is a bit different because you actually were running your own business in the tours and travel sector, which unfortunately, because of the COVID-19, was adversely affected. Please tell us about that.
So since the beginning of this pandemic, things have really taken a very sharp turn for us in the tours and travel sector. It got us all flat-footed, whereby we never expected to have this kind of a situation. We never imagined that we'll reach a point that people will not travel. And so to many companies, to many SMEs like myself, it really got us off book. The situation has been very bad. And the worrying factor right now is, how do we remain afloat? Because many times, as in the many instances that we have right now, is bills keep on piling. There's nobody traveling with you, have no revenue. So how do you really stay afloat? And that has been the challenge, which is the challenge for many companies and many SMEs.
Is your business currently open?
And I think, yeah.
Is your business currently open?
No, at the moment we are closed. The only safaris we are doing is just within the city in Nairobi. But you see, that only makes like 1% the revenue stream that do. Remember, like at the moment this is the peak season for tourism, June, July, August, and we are zero locally counted. And the thing that I would like maybe to share panelists is, many young people who are running their office, their main challenges. Personally, myself, my biggest worry is going to lose many of my employees. I know some of them right now, they're engaging in skills. And these people may never maybe come back.
Okay.
The time it has taken to
Okay, thank you for that, Bernard. Okay, thank you for that, Bernard. And I just want to rope in Tommy very quickly, because I'm curious, is this the same situation also in Nigeria? Because he's representing the tourism sector. So what's the scenario like on the other side of the continent?
Are you sure we're on the other side of the continent?
Literally, we're in the east, right? You're in the west.
All right, so I think we have the same situation here. The local airline operators have been clamoring to open business. They've been really speaking to the government. And as a matter of fact, it was said that local flights are going to resume. So I very much could relate to what Ben was just saying. Business was branded to halt. And from what I understand of that industry, I happened to speak with one of the young people who owned one of those companies a couple of months ago when COVID just arrived, and said to me, even the biggest of them only have 3 months being hits, to be able to take care of business and salaries. But when it comes to when they beyond that point, it's going to be really difficult for them to run or to keep open. And they've been one of the hardest to say, even here in Nigeria, they've been one of the hardest to hit. The only airline that has been operating is Air Peace, that has been helping Nigeria lift passengers. That's about the aviation. Let's talk about business generally. Even the Nigerian exchanges massively hit. The losses in millions. People have outrightly refused to buy bank shares. People just refused. That's why the fact that they declared surplus in profit. People just refuse to invest. Investors just refuse to just put money there. The manufacturing industry as well. If you look at that manufacturing industry, they've gotten so much relief from the government trying to put money in place so they could resuscitate those who were dead, those who had those, they had relief, reduction in percentage. But ultimately, businesses are not finding it easy to bounce. 40% of staff, most people were retained. Hush, the government said they shouldn't lay off staff. But quite a number of people have lost jobs. You need to see the number of people carrying. When you see people with folders in Lagos, Nigeria, when you see people with folders in the afternoon walking around in Lagos, those are job hunters. And there are so many of them. So you can imagine so many people losing their jobs. Salaries slash here and there. Businesses are not finding it easy.
Okay, and we also have...
Businesses are seriously trying to hold their head above water. But ultimately, I think this is going to be the test of the survival repeated. And a quick one for Mercy there. In the process of trying to wait for COVID-19 to move, I think I should share a little bit of something with you. Check yourself right now and what can you do. A couple of years ago, I was at a point where I just didn't want to do anything related to what I was doing. And so I started home and I woke up one morning to Missy, you're a fantastic cook. Can you cook for people? And I started cooking for people. Coincidentally, with just less than $2. What you have $2 now, 1,000 plus. I started cooking moi for people. It became a big business until I decided to drop it. You could find that you have some talent, even now during COVID-19, that would thrive, will at least tide you over until that big job comes around. So explore what you have to me.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Tommy. And also we have Simon, who's a counseling psychologist and a pastor at Nairobi Chapel. So Simon, I want you to probably address us from the point of one of the other sectors that has been hard hit is religious institutions, because for instance here in Kenya, we know that it's been weeks since people have actually been to either church or mosque or a temple. So probably just give us your insight on that.
Indeed, about this.
Oh, sorry, Simon, I think we're having a bit of an issue with your audio. You're fluctuating. If you could please repeat that.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
So I was saying every sector in art.
I think we're having a bit of a challenge with your internet connection. I don't think we can hear you clearly, so I'm just going to let you sort that. But right now, let me just go back to Paul and Gina, because essentially what we are seeing happening within the tourism sector, within the religious institutions, is literally a scenario where risk communication becomes very important, because none of these industries could have predicted that today they would be where they are. So in the context of our topic today, branding for success, what sort of advice would you have to anyone who's running a business in a sector that has been adversely affected by the pandemic? Let me start with you, Paul.
Oh, you're throwing me right into the deep end. And as someone who's also running a business, we're all grappling with this phenomenon that no one anticipated, no one expected, and just trying to make the best out of this. But I would look at it from the perspective that, especially for businesses, I've seen various attempts by different governments around the world to try and come up with what I would call stimulus program. Business. Some of these stimulus programs are from the point of taxation. It might be important or it might be necessary for a business owner to look up what are some of the incentives that the local administrations or local governments are giving to help cushion them. I know some in certain jurisdictions, businesses are being paid to ensure that the payroll, they don't lay off people. So that is where I would begin. Somebody mentioned the tourism sector. I think there were certain incentives that were put across
I think we have lost Paul. Gina, do you mind taking this? There seems to be an issue with everyone's feed today, just a lot of internet fluctuations. So Gina, maybe as we wait for Paul to get back, just to answer, how can businesses best address risk communication?
I think people's business model
Yeah.
that might have previously worked very well pre-COVID, but coming out of it, I think we might have to relook at our, specifically, people might want to consider how their business can pivot to adjust to new normals. For example, if you previously relied on foot traffic to a brick and mortar sale, maybe we have to figure out, the digital strategy instead. But I do think that, this is a period of time to need to relaunch our business, and we do come out, because things will definitely not be the same. I understand fully about and hospitality, and worldwide, in that very number of lost. But when you look at some of the news last days, that people are eager, and so I wouldn't be too depressed. I would just try and look at how we can come back, and we do, because I do think people do tap, and they'll want, there'll be a sense of wanting to get out and do different. So I think we need to be very, and stay very resilient, but also look, see how well we can relaunch.
Okay. And in the context of, earlier on you talked about authenticity, so, and I personally believe that authenticity comes from defining what your purpose is. And now we are seeing that a lot of businesses are having to literally go back to the drawing board and redefine what their purpose is. So what are some of the tips that you could give anyone who perhaps maybe before I used to handle tours and travel in the Mara, but now I'm finding that I have to limit my operations to Nairobi. So I have to look for these new clients, which by the way is really kicking. If you've been on social media, I think I'm feeling some FOMO. In fact, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be going to the park, because everywhere I look, I'm seeing wonderful pictures of, ordinary Kenyans visiting the parks, things that 6 months ago nobody was interested, but now all of a sudden, and that for me just represents some of the opportunities that COVID is actually also bringing to the forefront.
Absolutely, and I think that is the other thing. In every situation, most of our learning is learned the hard way, and I think we will learn how to repurpose for our business. But like you said, I've seen all those pictures of the park, and it's been years since I went to the park. I'm excited to go again. But I do think people will come back to the Mara and that. And I think sometimes we can kind of get into this position where we don't think we will ever go back to the way it was. And yet I do think we need to prepare for that possibility, because, should the scientists be right, should there be a vaccine, should, this disease be contained, then people will be wanting to go back, and the economy could kick into high gear, and we want to be ready for when that happens. And by preparing our relaunch strategy now, I think that is what we should be using time. I don't think we should wait. We don't have to wait around to make the most of it. So I really believe that whilst we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario, I think we need to remain.
Okay, and maybe this to you, Angie, because if you're talking about branding for success, and we're seeing businesses who unfortunately right now, they're having to deal with a lot of risks, and risk communication is a key part of that. So what would you say as a career coach and HR lead in terms of how can businesses humanely handle their employees, whether you're doing salary reductions, whether you're doing redundancies, which means ultimately layoffs, or whether you're completely shutting down? What is the best way to effectively communicate this in a way that ultimately doesn't dent the brand?
I think, fantastic. I think the key thing here is communication. With businesses, I like what Bernard said about, he's worried about some of the employees and staff leaving the organization. And, the thing is, the businesses that are going to continue to be respected and viewed as good places to work, despite what goes on in this season, are businesses that communicate effectively, being able to communicate to your staff. Your staff should not hear about redundancy plans from outside. They should not hear about it from Twitter, should not hear about it from Grapevine. You should have a conversation as an organization with your employees. Talk about what the reality is. I've consulted with a number of firms who, when this started, were like, okay, what does this mean? What will this look like? And we drew up a couple of scenarios. And it was like, okay, when we get to this point, you will need to bring your staff in to be able to discuss, okay, this is what is happening in the market. This is how it's affecting us. And being vulnerable, and the whole thing that we've been mentioning about authenticity. Staff are not children. I tell people employees are not children. Sometimes organizations can treat employees as if they're children who can't perceive anything and they're too young, or they can't really handle the truth, but they can actually handle the fact. If they understand and they feel like you are being forthright, you're being open with them, then you can tell them this is what's going on. We are all going to take a pay cut. We're all going to go through this XYZ. And even inviting your staff to be able to speak into whether it's doing things differently. So we're doing tours in Nairobi now. Excite your staff about that. Let them say, oh, we would all want to go to Mara, but we can't. So now we're going to do tours in Nairobi. Let's all rally behind this. Let's do this. And what Gina has said about planning the future. One day when all of this opens up, despite the fact that there will be new measures in place, we will go back to Mara. We will travel to a different place. Invite your staff to communicate and to speak into that vision of that one day, because in that way, then your staff feeling like, okay, they're not just getting rid of me because I'm a burden or they're trying to continue without me, but I have been part of the process in terms of how my leaders have communicated and have thought this through, whether it's cutting our pay, whether it's releasing us for a time, whether it's restructuring our work, because many organizations have had to do shifts, have had to do different time allocations for people, just so they can be able to humanely handle their staff populations. But bringing your staff along in terms of communicating with them and being able to envision with them the future and be able to talk through what's going on now, asking them to give ideas, because many times there are things that your staff see that you don't see as either CEO or senior management, because they're the ones on the ground, like say in Kenya, and therefore they would be able to speak into and feed into what you could be doing for the future. And just tie back everything we've said about brand position as an individual. As an employee, one of the things that you can do for your employer, whether you have been let go or you're currently in the organization, is to imagine again, to think again about how could you do things differently, cost-effective way, in a unique delivery, so that you're able to position your organization's brand that you belong to, your organization's brand differently. And that's something that will communicate that you are an employee and a staff of value.
Okay, thank you for that, Angie.
Tamima, just a quick one. I think, let me just say that I think it's all about trust. When your team trusts you as the leader, then employees are much more comfortable with change and more willing to embrace a new vision. But when your team doesn't trust you, you don't get their best effort. So I think we have to try and inspire, influence, and create real change for the future. And that means bringing our employees along with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I understand our time is up. So I want to thank everyone for making the time today. And of course, if you were catching us via the Switch TV Facebook page, I'm seeing a lot of feedback here. Most people actually saying that wonderful conversation. Here I have Alex saying, watching from Kisii, he's a teacher, very good conversation. Due to COVID-19, everybody, let's make quick responses and build up our brands. A lot of people actually appreciating. Thank you, Gina Dean. Someone here saying, I'm in employment. Thanks for the pointers. Now at least I understand how to make myself a better brand. And just to sum it up, what basically we are asking you to do is focus, be genuine, understand who are you, which services are you offering, what, how, and why. Ultimately, tell your story. And the thing about telling your story, you heard earlier from Paul, the gentleman who he gave an example of, you have to rehearse. Even us guys who do this for a living, you have to rehearse. Nobody just wakes up one day and bam, you're there. The other thing, be consistent. Whatever your line of work is, be consistent in delivering excellence. The other thing, and this is a hard one, guys, be ready to fail, especially now. If you're someone who is repurposing your brand, obviously you're trying new things, manage your expectations. And that's the only way you'll be able to maintain your own personal mental health. And then ultimately, when you're coming up with what to do right now. People, and especially consumers, are looking for brands that are actually impacting society from a positive point of view. And the most important one, research. Do not be afraid to network, ask questions, look at somebody who's doing what you already want to do, follow their example. And without a doubt, those are some of the tips that I can give you in terms of just building on your own personal brand, whether you're running a business. And as always, thank you so much for staying with us. If you have any tips around any topics, questions that you'd like us to address on Shaping African Conversations, be sure to let me know via the comment section. And also you can catch these on YouTube on the Shaping African Conversations YouTube channel. Well, that's it from me. Thank you so much to my panelists. Until next week, enjoy the rest of your week.